Greetings and salutations. My name is Michael Schwahn, I'm the nerd in a snapback, and today we are talking about the ugliest games of 2022. Now, I will say these are my ugliest games of 2022. I did play like 60 games, I think, total in this year. Some of them much longer than others, some of them much shorter than others, some of them only a little bit, but most of them I did play most of the way or entirely through. This is the third of 5 videos in this series that we're doing of our 2022 gaming year in review. The good, the bad, the ugly, the memorable, and the forgettable. We've already done the forgettable and the memorable, and here we are for the ugliest games of 2022. Now, one of the things I will point out real quick, though, is that ugly doesn't necessarily mean bad. Some of these games I would say are good, and I can even say that I can recommend them, but there is something that makes them ugly, for one thing, and it's not necessarily visually. It's not even graphics, it can be just a singular mark against them, something that makes them go, oh, that game is good, but, or I would love to play more of that game, however, those types of things, right? There's that one really glaring issue with the game that just makes it such a unfortunate thing. Some of them, I will say, are probably could go into a bad category, but most of them have a lot of good things about them, but something is really just holding them back. So, let's get started. Alright, number 10 is Save Room. Now, I will say that this game is silly, okay? It is a silly game. It's cheap as dirt. You could play it in like an hour. I'm pretty sure I beat all of the levels in 40 minutes. And this game is pointless. This game is entirely, literally, it is the attaché case from Resident Evil 4, and your job is to get everything that's outside of the case into the case. And this can mean anything from you're going to combine the herbs together to make the different medicines, or you're going to we're going to combine boxes of bullets, and oh, I can put bullets into this gun so that I don't have extra bullets left over, and then we're going to spin this around so that we can fit everything into the box. That is the whole game. It is utterly stupid, okay? It is dumb. I can't say I didn't enjoy it because I'm a weirdo who enjoys those kind of things. Like, if you ever play an open world survival crafting game with me, like Minecraft or 7 Days to Die or whatever, I'm the dude that organizes everything. I'll make all the boxes and put everything where it goes and give it categories and stuff. But this is not a game. It is so ridiculous. If you feel like wasting half an hour, go play it. Number 9 is Project Zomboid. Now, the thing that I'll say, kind of like we talked about in the intro, is that there is nothing wrong with Project Zomboid. It's got decent visuals, it's got a lot of options, the game runs well, it's built well, but it falls on my ugliest games because I feel like the game is lacking in direction. It feels almost like a developer tool, kind of like RPG Maker, where it's like, here, we built all of these things, now you get to do something with it. You have to find your own fun, which I don't agree with necessarily as an idea or a concept. And there are lots of people that have done really substantial mods for Project Zomboid that add the fun, that add stories, that add missions, that add balance, that add whatever to it, right? But that feels so bad to me because it's like, if your game relies on other people or the player or, you know, like independent, like, you know, home developers building things to make the game fun for themselves and for other people, that's ugly in my opinion. It's got such a decent concept, but it doesn't have any meaningful structure to me, which is why it's on this list. Number 8 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. The most recent Call of Duty, and the Call of Duty that we will be stuck with for the next 2 years. Now, one of the things is that this Call of Duty is the first Call of Duty that I like genuinely cared about in over a decade. I definitely have the fondest memories of like Modern Warfare 2, the old one, and Call of Duty Black Ops and Black Ops 2, and after that it just kind of stopped being as good of a game, and I didn't like. I played a handful of them, but there was a lot of things about a lot of them that I didn't like, and there are a lot of things about this one that I do like. I like how they have slowed things down. They made having like tactile movement feel relevant, and the slowed down gameplay, it's still very, very fast. You can still just race your way around the map if you want to, but the way that they've reined it in a bit, it feels good. It's got a really solid initial presentation. However, it's a game that has a lot of issues. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm tired of getting one shot in the head from across the map by that sniper there. No, I mean like the game crashes a lot. And the menus are really janky. Like trying to get through the menus in like the lobby or customize your loadout is abhorrently difficult. And for a game that literally made $1 billion in its very first week, and a game franchise that continues to make buku dollars, it is absurd that we are getting a game that runs this atrociously. Now, I will give it a small little like asterisk green light of that once you finally get into a match, generally the actual matches work pretty well. It does have some issues with like weapon balance, and you know, there's some guns that are just abhorrently better than others, and they've since released Warzone and DMZ, and I wasn't super into either of those, but that's all opinion stuff. But for a game that is easily like the definition of a AAA release, this should be the pinnacle, the creme de la creme, right? The tippity tip top of all video games that should set the standard. For it to be as janky as it is absolutely unacceptable, and why it deserves its spot on this list. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is number 7. Now, real quick out the gate, I think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a great game. I really do. It's got a really fun combat if you put it on easy. Seriously, if you play any of these Xenoblade Chronicle games, just put them on easy and have fun, because some of the enemies get way too spongy as you're playing through them if they're not on easy. But the games are fun. They're a lot of fun, and the stories and the worlds are really cool. They have really unique concepts and ideas, new types of storytelling that take you on these really fantastic adventures. I like this game, okay? I played the first one. It was a hard game to get through because of how much side content there is. I can say the same for this one, and I can say for the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that I'm still trying to chew through, because these games are huge. They're like 100-hour RPGs. That's not why they're on this list, though, okay? The reason they're on this list is, well, at least Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is on this list, is because it's on the Switch. And I don't inherently have a problem with the Switch. I have probably played more games on my Switch than I ever played on my PlayStation 4, and definitely than I've played on my PlayStation 5. The Nintendo Switch has fantastic games, but the Nintendo Switch is fucking old, okay? The Nintendo Switch came out 6 years ago, and it was already basically outdated when it released because it had an old tablet chip in it when it launched, and the games that are exclusive to it are either lower end in terms of like graphical style so that they can run well, or they're pushing the limits of what is possible on this system, and they just struggle because of it. Now, Monolith Soft are definitely the people that have done the most impressive work with the Nintendo Switch. They made these big, awesome, expansive, detailed worlds at really low resolutions. This game is a blurry mess. And if it wasn't for the fact that it was a relatively slow-paced RPG, it would probably be unplayable with just how rough it looks at times. There's a couple other things that I'll throw onto the pile of like why this belongs on the ugly list. The blades that are the collectible characters in the game that have their own individuality, personality, characters that have their own stories. Most of them are female, and most of them are hypersexualized, both in terms of their design and the way that they're presented within the game itself. It's also got gacha in it, but it's not gacha that you have to pay money for. It's just an inbuilt, like, isolated gacha system, and gacha systems suck. Just like throwing that in there too. And I know that this game had development issues because they had a significant portion of the team be pulled off of the development of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 so that they could go work on optimizing Breath of the Wild back when that game was being developed and when it released in 2017. And these games were released in the same year. And so, like, there's reasons for some of this game's struggles, and there's reasons for some of the things that we don't like about this game, but this game definitely feels not just held down by the Switch, but also just held down by some inherent design decisions. And it's going to be one of the ugliest games for me of 2022. Number 6 is Steel Rising. Now, I had a decent amount of hype for Steel Rising. I like Soulsian games. I like Bloodborne. I like Nioh. I like Dark Souls. And anytime I see a new Soulsian game, I'm like, yes. Now, Steel Rising was definitely fighting for hype. It was fighting for hype against games like Thymesia, and especially fighting for hype specifically against Lies of P. Now, Lies of P, which is a kind of grim, dark, dystopian, Pinocchio-focused Soulsian game, that game hasn't come out yet. And it still looks really good, but again, it still hasn't come out yet. Steel Rising looked really good, and I will say that visually, this game looks really good. Visually. It runs so bad. Terrible. It runs so bad. I have a Ryzen 5900X, 32 megabytes of RAM. No, not megabytes. Megabytes? Gigabytes? The fuck metric does RAM? Whatever. 32 MB of RAM and a 3070 Ti in this computer. And I could not get this game to run at reasonable rates on any settings. It could be, thank you Cerulean GB, I appreciate you. And so I could not get this game to run for crap. It didn't matter if I was running it at 1440p or 4K or 1080p using DLSS on performance mode or anything. I could not get this game to run at a solid 60 frames per second. If you go and look at the reviews for this game on Steam, there is so many negative reviews of it because it's like, oh man, bad this, bad this, bad this, and everything is performance. When are we getting a performance patch? When is this game not going to run like ass? Are you ever fixing it? And the worst part is the devs have straight up said, no, we're done with forward support on this game. The DLC has been released. We don't have any other plans. Okay, thanks, bye. And it's like, so you're not doing a performance patch? And they just, nope. So it's awful. It feels horribly unplayable at times. I kind of got it to run at like a shaky 45 FPS, which is not good enough considering the system specs I have. And that is so unacceptable. And for the devs to just be like, anyway, we already got your money. Peace out, bye. Number 5 is Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence. Now, there's like a lot of asterisks on this one being on this list. The biggest one being is that I played it through an emulator because it's very difficult to get a physical copy of this game, and you still have to have a system that it can be played on, which would require like a PlayStation 2 or a backwards compatible PlayStation 3. It's not an easy game to play if you aren't emulating it. And unfortunately, that makes it really rough to play. Now, I have a very powerful system. I was able to emulate it very, very well. I slapped on some 4K upscaled textures and told the emulator to do all the fancy shit. The game looked probably better than it ever has looked in the past, right? But it was rough to play. One, because the game is janky. Like, just at its core, the game has some janky mechanics. However, the problem is that those older PlayStation consoles, they had pressure sensitivity buttons, and these buttons had half steps to where you could half push them down or full push them down, and that was a used mechanic in the game. That mechanic was used for the sake of aiming down sights. Now, if you've played like Call of Duty or anything like that, you would aim down sights with one button and shoot with the other one. That is not how this works. It would be a half press to aim down sights and a full press to shoot the gun, and that is so weird in terms of just general design. It doesn't make sense. But guess what's not really that possible on an emulator? Having half presses of buttons, which means that aiming down sights just did not work. And so, but you could get away with that if you stealthed everywhere. I didn't feel like the stealth mechanics worked very well. So you know what I did? I killed everyone by running up to them, literally just running up to them and killing them with CQC, close quarters combat. I killed like 240 something people in a game that is predominantly supposed to be a stealth game, which made a particular river, if you know the game, really long. But even beyond that, this game's got a really weird story, all right? There are some moments that you're like, I don't know what's happening. I can only stare at this, gawk, and amaze at what I'm seeing. There's a dude who tries to electrocharge himself because he's got lightning powers by grabbing the junk of another dude, okay? This game is fucking weird. That said, Boss is still one of the greatest characters in video games, okay? I'll give you that. Boss, awesome. Love Boss to death. Everything else about this video game, ugly as hell. Number 4 is Phasmophobia. Now, I will give Phasmophobia some credit. It created an entire genre, okay? I don't know if it was necessarily the first, like, ghost investigation game. I'm pretty sure that there's probably some, like, really bad licensed Ghostbusters game from some time ago that Phasmophobia might be based on. I don't know, right? But Phasmophobia is definitely the game that created this massive storm of this style games, and that has just continued to persist. It's the largest of them. It's the most successful of them. It was the first of them. It had tons of people playing it. There was tons of streamers playing it. There was tons of YouTube videos on it. Everything. It created this massive sensation. Tons and tons of sales. You had tons of copycats trying to make their own games, their own ideas, their own brands, their own gimmicks and stuff. But Phasmophobia was the centerpiece. The center of the hurricane, that eye of everything that just created the storm. They had all of these sales. What did they do afterwards? Nothing. Nothing. I cannot believe how little I feel that Phasmophobia has grown. It's an early access game. It's still early access. And I don't feel like that game has evolved or grown or really pushed its development in any meaningful way whatsoever, despite millions and millions of dollars being poured into that game to its success. And I've seen games that are from smaller studios with significantly less money that I feel look better, that run better than Phasmophobia. And I don't even necessarily think that any of these games are fantastic, but it just amazes me how little Phasmophobia has went forward since its initial launch into early access and since this a massive initial team. And I mean, by all means, I guess take your bag and run away with it. I mean, but at the same time, it's like you had literally all of the eyes of a massive portion of the internet on you, and you did nothing. Absolutely nothing. This one definitely pains me the most to put on my ugliest games list, and that is Bayonetta 3. Now, I will say, this is an incredible game. I loved this game. I recommend this game. I love it. It was fun to play. I thought the story was fun. I liked the characters, both old, new, and returning. I love this game, okay? I like the Bayonetta franchise as a whole, and I was very, very happy with Bayonetta 3, even though a lot of other people were not. However, as we talked about earlier with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, we're back with this same issue of it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. Now, Platinum Games has shown that they can do some pretty impressive work within the limitations of the Nintendo Switch. Back in 2019, they released a little game called Astral Chain that is definitely very much in the same vein of what Platinum Games is known for, games like Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance and, of course, Bayonetta. And it ran pretty damn well. Made my Switch overheat, but it ran pretty damn well. But they confined themselves to more limited spaces to get it to run as well as it did. Bayonetta 3 went bigger. It was more bombastic, bigger environments, areas, everything. And you can feel how much the Nintendo Switch is strangling this game. Because it's like the cutscenes, they look pretty good. They don't look as good as they could. Nothing about this game looks better than Bayonetta 1 did, and Bayonetta 1 released in 2009 on the PlayStation 3. 13 freaking years ago, okay? And like, I don't know if the PlayStation 3 is stronger than the Nintendo Switch, but at the very least, it freaking feels like it, right? And it's so unfortunate because Bayonetta should be this massive, bombastic game. It's ridiculous, right? It is Devil May Cry, but more in so many ways. And everything, the environments, the gameplay, the cutscenes, everything just feels held back by the Nintendo Switch. And I'm not even willing to blame the devs, because some people are like, oh, it's because you can do good things on the Switch if you just take more time. Look at Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild runs at 25 frames per second, nerd. God. It's not the end-all excuse, and they use things like volumetric fog to hide a whole bunch of details to get the game to run even at what it does run at. And trying to get a game like Bayonetta 3 that is large scale to run at 60 frames per second and not have these bland, devoid environments is just not possible on the hardware. And it pains me to know that this game will never be as good as it should have been because of the limitations of the Nintendo Switch. Number 2 is Tales of Arise. Okay? I love the Tales series. Tales of Symphonia is still one of my favorite games of all time. Tales of Berseria is incredible. I love that game immensely. And basically every Tales game has something that is good about it. This is a very seasoned, beloved franchise. There's like 17 games in this franchise. And I'll start out by saying that Tales of Arise is a good game. In fact, it's probably even a great game. It's got really good visuals. It's really fun to play. It's probably one of the hardest Tales games that I've ever played, at least especially when it comes to the bosses, right? It has a really good story, incredible, memorable characters. Like probably some of the best characters on an individual basis in the entire franchise. And the problem is that this game is long. Okay? And I'm not saying that as some nerd that just plays like 20 hours of Bloodborne and just like, that was good. Oh man, 30 hours of RPG? I can't do it, man. This game starts out great. This game starts out fantastic. And it has this main arc that you're dealing with. I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler free as possible. It has this main arc that it's got this great pace, right? It's got this just great momentum, this build up as you're meeting new people and taking down new enemies and seeing new environments. And then you conclude this first arc. And when it comes to its natural conclusion, they could have rolled credits and I would have been like, this game, 10 out of 10, amazing. It's incredible. It's one of the best RPGs ever made. The game doesn't end at that point. In fact, you're only halfway through the game. There's two halves of this, okay? There's when that initial arc starts and stops, and then there's everything that still has to happen after it. And that first half, incredibly well designed, well paced, fantastic. The second half is not. It is not. It is so much not. It makes me think of a lot like Dragon Quest XI. Dragon Quest XI, you're trying to collect the Dragon Balls, not literally. And once you do that, some shit happens, and then you fix what the shit happens, and then you're like, yeah, all right, that feels good. And then they're like, but what if you kept going? And it feels the same way here in Tales of Arise, is that you do all these cool things, and then you finish this big, massive journey that you've been on, and then they go, but what if you kept going? And I didn't need it to keep going. It overstays its welcome, and there's a lot of questions that never get answered because they never had the chance to get answered in that first half of the game. So then I guess they decided that they needed to answer them in the second half, but because they're already in the second half of the game, they just start exposition dumping on you. Just characters having these long, drawn-out conversations about shit that doesn't matter anymore because it's all stuff that's already done and over and gone with. I don't understand the design philosophy around the back half of this game. I still liked the ultimate conclusion of it, but man, is the second half just a massive stain compared to the absolute masterpiece that was the first half. Number 1 is It Takes Two. Okay, I know this game got Game of the Year in 2021. Trust me, I know. I was paying attention, all right? And I feel like there are two sides of this game, all right? There's the gameplay side and there's the story side. And they are very, very much different boats. We'll talk about them in that order. Gameplay. This game's really fun. Stellar. Cute. Great co-op experience. I loved playing it. I absolutely loved playing this game, especially because I played it with my partner in life. We had a great time together, solving puzzles, coordinating our abilities and stuff. Fantastic, incredible co-op experience. Okay? Then we move into the story, okay? And I will keep this as spoiler-free as possible. But what the fuck is this game's story? Okay? What the absolute fuck is this game's story? Now, I guess you could try to say that this game's story is trying to be real, trying to keep it real, present, realistic scenarios of what kind of shit happens in the real world. Fuck that. I fucking hated this game after I was done with it. I absolutely despise this game. I cannot think fondly of this game because of this game's story and some events that happen in it. This game's story is ugly. And it's not ugly in like it's poorly written. It is ugly in a way that nothing should ever be ugly. It's ugly in a way of stories where when you ask someone about like what happened to them, they just say, I don't want to talk about it. Or, sorry, that's hard for me to talk about. It is ugly. And it is memorable for how ugly it is. I don't recommend this game to anyone. Absolutely anyone. And it's really unfortunate because it's only a few moments, a scene here, a scene here, a scene here, but those scenes stick out so brightly like a wine stain on a bright white sheet, right? This is an absolute mar on what would otherwise be an incredible game and a stellar experience. But because of these absolutely atrocious moments, this game is despicable. I don't believe it should have won Game of the Year, and I don't recommend it to anybody, and it will forever be one of not just the ugliest games of 2022 for me, but one of the ugliest games of all time. So that concludes my ugliest games of 2022. Let me know what your thoughts are. There's, like I said, a lot of these games aren't necessarily bad. There's some beloved games on here. There's some really unknown games. Like, I don't know how many of you knew what Save Room was, right? And that's perfectly fine. And if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, if you think something should have been higher or lower, if there's something that I missed, there's a decent chance that I didn't play it. I did manage 60 games this year. And while that's a lot, that is not anywhere close to all of the major games, even just the major games that released in 2022. And I mean, some of these games weren't even 2022 games, right? So let me know what your thoughts are. Put them down in the comments below. If you want to keep up the conversation elsewhere, two great places to do so are Discord and Twitter. Speaking of Discord, we have several channels where we talk about these things, including like a channel dedicated to our reaction videos. If you want to put stuff in there for us to check out together. We do stream on Twitch. If you'd like to catch us there, I hope to see you there. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like. If you want to catch future videos, please subscribe to the channel. And if you do watch one of the other videos on the channel, or if I see you in the live stream, thank you and enjoy.